We're good. We're about to go.
Okay. We're starting.
You know what I hate?
What's that?
I hate how much society normalizes getting old.
Do you?
Yeah, I do. I do actually. Because I think people think that as you get older, you must progressively become, or you're naturally going to progressively become more sedentary.
Isn't that what you're supposed to do?
Yeah, that's what people think. But I think today's episode is to show how opposite it actually is. And I think that everybody in this room is a good example of that, based on the things that we've done, the mindsets that we have, and then the way that the business operates. So whether it's wanting to pick up your grandkids or play in the floor with your grandkids, whether you don't want to be moaning and groaning when you're 55 years old, getting up out of the recliner, or it's just like really elite fitness of like running marathons, running 10Ks. I think that's exactly what today's conversation is going to cover for those people and show you that becoming older in age does not align with becoming more sedentary in your life, because if you stay in motion, you're going to feel better. Your body is going to adjust to it better. And I think that's exactly what today's going to cover. And Wade said a great quote last week that when you stop and like really digest this quote, it is perfect. And it's aging is the progressive pursuit of comfort. Aging is the progressive pursuit of comfort. How good is that?
That's great, but it's not me. I'm not going to take credit for it.
You sent the quote. I
sent
said
it to you. I just want to make sure I'm not taking credit.
He was
for
trying to act like he had.
Yeah,
until
he said
until
it.
he got on the air.
Now
he's back.
But no, that's exactly what today's going to cover. And I think before we get to that, we had a big weekend for some of our team here. So I think we're going to start off with Abby. Abby spent the weekend in Austin, Texas, running the Austin, Texas Marathon. So tell us about that.
Yeah, it's talking about staying in motion. I was in motion for a little while there this weekend. I went to Austin and it was super great. The marathon, like the running culture in Austin is electric. Like people are on fire for running there, and it's insane to see, and it's super motivating. I went in telling everyone in the office that I was just going to like run for fun, which that is my goal in every race that I do, because I never want to be so fixated on a time or a pace to where I cross the finish line and I feel disappointed in myself, because that's not, what I'm placing my identity in. Like, it's great to have paces and goals and things that I want to hit, but ultimately, like, the reason that I'm running is to share the gospel. That's why I write scriptures on my body when I'm running, because it's like, if I'm going to be running, might as well be running for the Lord, and so I never want to get too caught up in a number or a time or a pace. That being said, I did PR, so that's exciting. It was like I think 12 minutes.
Yeah.
Was
3:21.
Yeah,
and then you
it
ran
was
3:09
at the Derby Marathon, and then at this one it was 3:09.
Yeah, on a tougher course, honestly.
Yeah, I honestly, like, I was really nervous about the hills, and then I just kept telling myself, like, for every uphill there's a downhill, so it helps because I would just kind of ease up on the uphills and then just fly on the downhills.
Yeah.
I don't really know if that's what you're supposed to do, but it worked for me.
Yeah, that's why your quads are killing you today.
Yeah.
You flew too hard on
but I pretty much just like ate candy the whole time, listened to worship music, and ran, and it was great.
That's awesome.
But 26.2 miles is nothing compared to 51 miles that you did, Mr. Logan Locke. So tell us a little bit about that and the message and the meaning behind it.
Yeah. Well, first off, any distance is hard especially when you get over half marathon distance. But yeah, I've had this run planned for a while. So I put in for 2 lottery races this year. I didn't get into either one of them. And so I knew that I wanted to do something. And it was around October. So my mom passed away whenever I was 10, and her death anniversary is in October. So it was around October this year that I first kind of got the idea of doing like a birthday run for her. And she would have been 51 this year, and her birthday's February 16th. So I was like, well, maybe I could do 51 miles for her 51st birthday. And so I was like, first, I need to obviously pitch this to my wife. So I saw it was on a Sunday. I was like, well, at least it's on a weekend. So that helps. Pitched it to her, and she was like, yeah, I think that'd be awesome. So because, it's hard, it's hard to like celebrate those type of things, obviously, especially whenever it's somebody that's not here anymore. And so I was like, this is like a perfect way for me to kind of mesh like what I feel is a good way to honor her, but then also like being able to celebrate her and her birthday. So I mapped out about a month ago, I mapped out a 10-mile loop around Bowling Green, and like one of my favorite places to run. And so when I got that, I was like, okay, I can do this lap 10 times, and just posted about it and had a bunch of people come out, and started yesterday at 7 a.m. weather was a little iffy leading up the night before. We had like tornado watches, we had storms, a bunch of rain, and then when I went to bed, I basically waited Saturday night for all the tornado watches to expire and all that. And once they did, I went to bed, woke up, and started getting ready yesterday morning, Sunday morning. After about 30 minutes, I flipped the front porch light on, and there's like an inch of snow on the ground.
Blew
It's
my
like
mind.
coming
Like,
down,
outside, yeah.
windy, snowy. I was like, oh my gosh. And the really cool, I've talked about this a couple of times, but the really cool part about it was I had a couple people that had planned on running with me texted me that morning, and they didn't ask, are you still running today? They just said, are you still starting at the same time? So it's like, it's so cool. Like the expectation of people that you surround yourself with, like they knew I was still going to run. They were like, are you still starting at the same time? Like, it's so small and they probably didn't even think twice about it. But in my head, I'm like, those are the type of people that you want.
Well, it also shows a lot about you too. The
Yeah, I
fact
guess
that they
that's
know
true.
that
Yeah.
you're not,
Yeah.
And Emily said that when I was waiting on you to finish.
Mm.
She's like, there's no way he was going to cancel. I already knew that. Like,
Yeah.
there's no doubt. So
Yeah.
it says a lot about you too.
Yeah, so it was a lot of fun, but and so it's cool to have people like that will hold me accountable, and they just assume they know like it's going to get done no matter what. And that's what I said yesterday morning before I started. I posted on my Instagram, like there's something so humbling about knowing you're about to do something really hard, especially when you know you're not going to quit, because you know that no matter what thoughts are coming through your head. And I had a couple of times where I'm like trying to do math and I'm like, well, if I did drop, like people would get it, but it's like, but that's not even an option, and they're so humbling about that because you have to just live in whatever moment you're in. And there was a lot of that yesterday, especially from the jump. I started about 7:15, so we all met down there, and I waited on a couple people to get there who wanted to start with me. So I started at 7:15 on my first 10-mile loop. It was like still really snowy and windy whenever I started. First lap flew by, got to 10 miles, and then and so I started with like 4 people that lap, and then so that finished mile 10. And then on my second lap, I think I had like 3 or 4 people with me then. I did not run one single mile by myself. The only portion I ran by myself was the last half mile. And I told everybody I was running with, like, hey, I'm going to run the last half mile by myself. That's how much support I had. So then, yeah, mile 10 to 20 had people with me, feeling pretty good. And then around the marathon distance is when I really started to like feel it a little bit mentally. Because then you start doing that math of like, I'm halfway done, but I still have 25 miles to go. But honestly, like the day was great. I felt good physically. I really didn't have a lot of issues. The only thing was like a little bit of stomach discomfort just from eating so much food and like forcing it, which, you have to be able to sustain. But yeah, honestly, I really can't complain about it. I mean, it was nice to have the adversity. Emily was like laughing last night because we were talking about the weather the night before, and I was like, oh my gosh, like all these, who knows what it's going to be like. And she was like, you love that.
Yeah.
Don't lie. Like you're glad that it's going to be like, she was like, you would rather it be that than like sunny and 55. I was like, yeah, for sure.
Didn't you PR as well in your 50
yeah, actually. So I did 51 miles for her birthday. And then I didn't stop my watch because I was like, the time was not the goal, but I also just wanted to replicate like it was a race and not pause my watch or worry about it. I did 50 miles in 8 hours, 53 minutes. So that was pretty, yeah, I was moving really well. It was on road, and my 50-mile PR was like 10 hours, 20 minutes on trail. But still, I mean, the distance is hard regardless.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was really happy with it. Yeah. So I ended up technically PRing for that.
My favorite moment was right before you started mile 40. I met back up with you, and Emily was there, and she brings out a piece of sourdough bread that she made. And I have a picture of it. I think I sent it to you.
Yeah, you sent it to me.
Logan's sitting there, and she's like she's holding the bread up.
She's making me eat. Yeah.
She's feeding him the bread.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. I did pretty good eating up until like getting close to that mile 30 mark, is whenever my body just started like not really wanting to eat. So at that point, I just kind of had to force things down. And then, yeah, when I was about to take off for the last lap, she was like, are you sure you don't want any? I was like, no. And then she was like, I'm going to get it. And then made me eat it. So Kevin got a picture
But
of
honestly,
her.
like we all made the comment. You were at mile 45. It looked like you like if I was just a random person on the street, just watching you run by, I would thought maybe you're 5 miles in. Like you didn't look like it looked really easy. I know it wasn't easy, but your body just seemed to hold up. Your spirits were good the whole time.
Yeah. And of course it helped having people with me the whole time. I mean, it keeps your mind pretty well busy. And I did the math last night. There were 14 people in total that came out and ran. Like, isn't that crazy? Like that actually ran at some point throughout the day in person.
Well, then, and everybody was following your live tracker, commenting on that.
Yeah, which was cool. So yeah, I shared a Garmin live tracker for my watch, and you can just share the link and people can track your location too. So I'm always like kind of weird about that, but
You forgot to turn it off. I'm still tracking.
No, I made sure to hit stop live trackers. Like, I don't want people to see where my house is. All my fans. I don't want them coming to my house. No, but so I shared the live tracker, and I was like getting comments on my watch. Abby was commenting on there, and some other people were just sending and Wade did too, some live messages. And so it was really cool to see that. So people could kind of keep up with it. It kind of felt like a race because they could track, but it was cool.
I thought it was cool too, just from a business owner standpoint. Yesterday, you're out running 50 miles. Abby's PR in the Austin Marathon.
Mm-hmm.
It was just cool, like the environment that we have here, and honestly, it's pretty normal. That's not like
nobody's like, oh my god,
no. Oh, you only did 50.
Yeah, or like, oh, you did 50. Come back to the office on Monday and get back to work.
But Logan, aren't your knees gonna be messed up when you get older and you're gonna need to replace them?
Running's probably bad for you. I think it's really bad for you.
Hope it's worth it. Hope it's worth your knees.
I was just about to say that. We're so young, Logan, me and you, so of course we can do it, right? But I mean, not everybody, because it's just so normal when you're old for your body to start failing, right? Like, isn't that just so normal? We all say it like, oh, I'm getting this ache in my side. It's just age. And, I've been sitting at a desk for 20 years. So it's that time for me. It's just normal. I got to get used to it now. Like, that's just normal, right?
Yeah, I think the context we should give before we dive into this is when you get older, you're obviously more prone to injury and aches and stuff, but there's ways to mitigate it. And I think that's exactly our point today. We're not saying like, oh, as long as you work out, you're never going to hurt.
Right.
Obviously, it's like you look at your body as like a vehicle. Like the more you like the wear and tear on it over time is more significant. But people always think like the cliche thing to think is like if you run a lot, you're destroying your knees. Or if you lift a lot of weight, you're hurting yourself, which is not the case at all. We made the joke yesterday. I was like running through my neighborhood this one time, and I was running through, and it was like cold outside, like really, really cold. It was like a year ago. And some guy's sitting in a lawn chair in his garage with the door up. And he was like, oh, you're better than me. You're braver than me. I was like, oh, man, I love it. And he was like, better be careful on your knees. I was like, no, it's not going to hurt me. And he was like, oh, it will. And he like had a beer in his hand. It was like sitting there drinking a beer in his garage, this old guy. I'm like, I think you're doing a little bit more damage to yourself than I am. But yeah.
That definitely is one of my, I hate to say like pet peeves, because I never want to be like, oh, this bothers me so much that someone's saying this. I mean, everyone has a right to their own opinion in the way that they think, but I also feel like there are so many factors that play into how our body hurts and aches the way that it does. And I think age is just honestly like an easy cop out when there are other things that we need to evaluate first. And I mean, I have had my fair share of like little pains in my side and things like that disappear over time. And I do think I am young, so I can bounce back kind of fast. But what would you say to the person that's like, well, it's too late for me now. Like I've already got this pain in my shoulder. I've already got this thing. And, I've missed the time to implement healthy habits now. Where do I go from here?
Well, geez, I think you guys should talk about the clients we work with. I mean, there are plenty of people.
I want to talk just specifically about one guy from my hometown that is seen as like a unicorn. He has always been a runner. And like whenever I was younger in high school, he was probably one of the only people in our hometown that run. He was running Boston. He's always been a great runner. When he was in his low 50s, he had a significant heart attack. It was a widowmaker. So if anybody knows what the widowmaker is, it's your left anterior coronary artery or descending. So it supplies the vascularity to your heart of your left ventricular chamber. So that's the one that pumps the blood out to your whole body. So that's why it's called widowmaker, because it basically just stops pumping blood to your whole body, and you die pretty fast with that one. So he had a heart attack, and he had nearly 100% blockage of that artery. And everybody in my hometown, it was funny. I had somebody make a comment when I was running the other day, and they were like, well, if he had that heart attack and he was running, that just shows that running doesn't do any good. And I was like, I'm spinning this a totally different way. So just think if he had spent all his years not exercising, taking care of himself, and then he has this heart attack, he probably would have been dead 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Instead, his body and his heart were strong enough to keep him alive enough to get to the hospital and have open heart surgery to be able to live.
Exactly.
So I think you can spin it that way too, and yes, it may be hard on your joints and maybe over time may not be super healthy going to the extremes.
Yeah.
But not doing anything is pretty bad and pretty detrimental for your body.
I always think about the Hot Rod Ultra race that we put on. I mean, we were talking about one of the participants yesterday while we were running past his house. He was 74 years old and did 82 miles.
Yeah.
And he continues to come back. And and it's all the people. I mean, 80-year-old there, 80. I think he was 80, 82. Had set a world record for the most marathons in a year. I mean, it's crazy. So like that logic doesn't really add up, and everybody says, well, that person's an outlier.
Yeah.
But maybe they're an outlier because they didn't just listen to what everybody was telling them.
Yeah.
Maybe that just means it's possible and they have healthy habits and stuff.
Yeah.
I think one of the great examples of what Abby was asking about, someone thinks they're too old to get started, things like that. Two good examples I think of are, honestly, you think of fad diets. Like fad diets are so popular right now, and you see so many people doing the carnivore diet. There's a guy from my hometown. He's probably in his early 50s. He's always been pretty out of shape, a bigger guy. His son and I went to high school together, and he recently started the carnivore diet. And he is like posting on Facebook every day about, I've never felt this good. Like he's taking care of his health. He's in his 50s. He's been, I would say, extremely overweight. He's lost a bunch of weight and he cares about his health. He's like getting on a bike. He started losing weight. So then he felt good enough to start like pedaling and riding, like pedaling on like an indoor trainer. Think about it. And you're in your 50s, especially if you're someone that's extremely overweight, your chances of having health conditions are probably much, much higher. And then when you start taking care of yourself, you may not realize it, but you're going to be probably shedding some of those health conditions